All right, Brent Porcio, Adam Garcia, Stephen Godani at Top Velocity, hashtag Pitching Tips Show, where you go to Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and you ask us a question, anything about pitching or here at Top Velocity. At Top Velocity, when you ask your question, hashtag Pitching Tips, and then we're going to answer it just like we are right now. What's our next question?
Nathan Wells asks, is there a right arm path for the ball to follow, or does it all depend on body size, type, pitching style, etc.?
You do see differences in deliveries, but when you look at the science and what classifies as a good arm path for injury prevention, for velocity, there's some key absolutes of where it should be for everyone. Now, I think what makes arm paths different is guys have different mobility issues, and they're always working around those mobility issues or speed issues, strength issues, and they're working around those issues, and it makes things look differently. But to tell you the truth, there is a good set of principles that should be followed in your arm path to make sure that it's healthy. Now, I don't want to get into all of it, so go to, I'm going to link it to the video, but watch my video on arm action of the high velocity pitcher, and it's taken from science, some key studies, and I'm showing you each place it needs to be in through the delivery. But just to kind of make a quick understanding of what it needs to be, if you have any arm pain, or you feel like you can't, you feel like the pressure on your arm is so high that you can't throw it any harder because you feel like then pain will actually become an issue, then you're struggling with the arm path, and you're struggling with the understanding of really the timing, the time that we have to give it to effectively load to where we will reduce the pain, the torques, and be able to accelerate the speeds. And it's really focusing on the concept of hip-shoulder separation. So why don't you get in a full stride, Adam? So at front foot strike, right? You land at front foot strike, and the key approach that we want to tap into is hip-shoulder separation. So that means your hips are open and your shoulders are closed. And so this glove is in line with the target or starting to scap load, and then this arm is back at this point. Now you got to be careful here, even though I said scap loading, we don't want this over or too much horizontal abduction where it's pulling behind the back here, because then that'll start early trunk rotation, and early trunk rotation destroys a healthy arm path. So first off, we got to make sure that this is not starting too early. It can be slightly pinched behind the shoulder, but still everything needs to be in line with the target hips open. The reason the hips need to be open, because that's what's going to, that's the momentum from the lower half, that when the shoulders delay from that, that's what's going to accelerate the arm forward, or accelerate the shoulder forward. And when the shoulder accelerates forward, it now puts a load on the arm. So it builds the eccentric forces on the arm, that's the better way to throw, is throw with releasing these eccentric forces as opposed to having no eccentric forces and trying to use concentric forces. And that's typically where we have arm problems, arm pain, and issues. So to get more of the eccentric forces on the arm, the hips need to get all the way open at front foot, okay? And with enough power to, as we delay the shoulder and hip and shoulder separation, then the shoulder is going to accelerate, releasing that torque from the core, and then those eccentric forces will hit the arm. But the other thing too, besides it trying to get the eccentric force of the arm, is we need to give the arm time. So giving the arm time is also in hip to shoulder separation. So the more the hips open, or the faster the hips are open, the more the shoulders stay closed. Now we give it more time to load. When we give it more time to load, it can more easily abduct into this nice, healthy position for arm loading. We have a study that showed 100 degrees of abduction. 90 would be at the shoulder, 100 would be around the ear. That's where the healthiest arm slots are, okay? Because that arm will more easily and more effectively load and externally rotate. And then that's going from there. If we have yet to move forward or try to release the arm, then it's going to be able to more naturally or more freely release the energy, as opposed to you trying to make up for that energy with the concentric movement. So I know that's kind of complicated, but the point is go watch the arm action video on the correct arm action that we find in studies that correlate to injury prevention and ball speed. And knowing that you'll only be able to create that arm action if you get into understand hip to shoulder separation, because it gives the arm time to go through that path and it doesn't get cut short. Because if we lack hip to shoulder separation, then it gets caught in between and it does things like hyperangulate or what they call drag, or we don't get into good abduction because it got caught in between, or we don't get maximum external rotation because it got caught in between. And that's typically where everything goes wrong. I know that was a big, long, complicated answer. Can you simplify that, I guess?
The only way I could think to simplify it is use more of your legs to create the velocity, which gives your arm more time to load, which will make it get in a better arm position. So the more you can generate from your legs to give your arm time to separate and get in and load will create a healthier arm slot for your arm. So like what he's saying about all these people that have mobility issues, power issues and stuff, you're overcompensating in a different area, which is putting a lot more stress on the arm. So if you're not creating the velocity with your legs, that's gonna force you to overcompensate with the arm and put you in a vulnerable position with your arm angle. So if you're one of those guys that's trying to get like a bunch of rotations, not getting a lot of drive with the legs, and then just ripping down with the arm, or the arm slot's too low, that's gonna all influence a lot more torques on the arm than if you're using your whole body and the kinetic chain to transfer the energy and create ball velocity, which is gonna take off the stress.
Yeah, that was good. So I like to give an example. So think about it. If I had, a common issue that I see at camps is guys have poor internal rotation in the hip and poor trunk rotation. So what will those two mobility restrictions do? Well, poor internal rotation means I'm gonna have a hard time loading the hips down, where I'm going to get a good drive through the hips, okay? So I'm gonna hit front foot and my hips are not gonna be rotating. So then what I'm not going to feel is the eccentric, or the release of the trunk following that energy, following good hip to shoulder separation. So I'm not gonna feel the load hitting the arm. So then I'm gonna have to cast the arm out in front of the face and pull the arm down and do all the things that would be ineffective for velocity and also hard on the arm. If I don't have a lot of trunk rotation, same thing. So say my hips do open at front foot strike, but I can't even close my shoulders off. Okay, so then it's still getting caught and drugged behind. It never had time, which more hip to shoulder separation would have given it time to load. So it gets caught in between, it gets hyperangulated, and it gets drugged through, and the same thing's wrong. It's inefficient for velocity, and it's really, really hard on the arm. So that's the point is, where are you stuck? So if you don't evaluate yourself and you don't look at, your anthropometrics, your performance measurements, you can look at your biomechanics all day long, but more than likely you're struggling with a good arm path because you have some issues athletically, not because you don't really understand a good arm path, even though it does help, but it's more based on your restrictions and what you're struggling with athletically. That becomes a problem. All right, so that was a good question. I know it's complicated, so look at the article that I post to the video. That should help. And if you have a question, go to Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, ask your question at Top Velocity, #pitching tips, and we're gonna answer it on the next episode.
Boys.